The Holy Gospel according to Mark, chapter 6. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. This is the gospel of the Lord. So today's gospel, the thing that jumped out at me about it, two things. One is Jesus trying to find rest for him and his disciples, crossing over to the other side of the lake, and not being terribly successful. All the people that needed to be healed and then their need to be healed did not necessarily match Jesus and the disciples' need to rest. And it just strikes me how much that remains true for all of us today. We're in the part of this pandemic now where there is a lot of debate about what should be open and what shouldn't, where you should wear a mask and why you don't have to, whether or not you should be vaccinated, whether or not we should be back in church full time. And it seems to me that perhaps those who have been experiencing more rest in the last year and a half during the pandemic may be ready for more interaction. And that makes me realize how many people, like Jesus, like the disciples, this was not a restful time for them. It still isn't. The first thing that comes to mind, of course, is all of the healthcare workers. Been working long shifts, have lost many of their colleagues, their mentors to this disease, had to fill in for people who had to stay home and be quarantined for weeks at a time and try to take up the slack. I've been following a few nurses and doctors online, and to see their day-to-day commentary of how long they are at work, how many patients had COVID on any given day, how many beds they need versus how many beds they have, has kept me painfully informed of that crisis. But they're not the only ones. We got the people in the grocery stores who, in addition to their normal responsibilities, started doing our shopping for us and packing up those groceries and bringing them out to our cars. We have everyone who is part of preschool child care. Most preschools today also have aftercare for elementary school students. And that changed sometimes hourly what they needed to do. A teacher would be sick, they would have to close the whole room down for 2 weeks, trying to keep track
of who had been exposed, who had tested positive, how many people called in sick, which rooms could be open, which rooms needed to be sterilized, what they needed to do once the elementary big brothers and big sisters joined in for the aftercare with the younger ones. I talked to people who were involved in that field who said they got calls all weekend long. And this has been their life for 18 months. People who work for the Small Business Administration, who were any part of trying to bring relief to people who were unemployed, who were furloughed during this whole thing. There are so many professions who have not had the break that they needed. They haven't had the rest. And I mention that because we as a country, we value work ethic, hard work, overtime, productivity, way more than God ever intended. Having on the seventh day, God rested, was intended to be a model for us, God leading by example. And yet, this country in particular is known for people not resting enough, people trying to do so many things at the same time. Is it any wonder that people in this country suffer from heart disease at such young ages? And so as we live in to this new time, UPS workers, all the people that delivered packages, Lord have mercy. Have you seen how hard they've been working? But as we live into this new time, I think it's really important for each of us, as we reconnect with one another, to ask those who have had a different experience than you have, what their experience has been like during this pandemic. I think you might be surprised at who feels rested now and who is craving rest right now. It would be disingenuous. It would not be reflective of the commandment that we love one another if we assume that other people have had our experience here. And it's so important for us to reconnect. You know, the Ephesians reading today, we are citizens with all the saints. It's about belonging, right? And we know that in this world, it's important to have a sense of belonging, and we know that is a fragile sense. Right now, you might not even feel like you belong to the community of faith that you, a year and a half ago, were absolutely certain you belonged to. This is a time in which we need to reconnect and remember our sense of belonging. Remember how much we do love one another. Show compassion by asking about other people's experience, that we might find our way into our tomorrows together, looking for ways to rest ourselves, to provide rest or gratitude for those who have not been able to rest, and to cross over to the other side in our thinking, trying to understand other people's experience. If we have learned anything in the last year and a half, maybe that is it, is that this has been a really hard thing. It still is. And it's all too easy for us to assume that our experience of it was the experience of everyone. It's not true. It's not even close. And if, as Jesus' disciples today, we are to be part of the healing that so many people still need, healings that were talked about in today's gospel, it has to begin by remembering our belonging to this beloved community, to remember that our belonging to the body of Christ cannot be taken away from us, not even by a pandemic, not even by death, and to hold tightly to our citizenship with all the saints and with one another as we gently go forward into a future as yet unknown.